Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Epping Forest and Commons Committee. As you're aware, the public element of the meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. Whilst we endeavour to live stream all our public meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the end of the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018, and for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Chair, any opening words?
Thank you, Town Clerk, and welcome to everybody in the room and online. I don't think it's too late to say Happy New Year. We're still just inside of January, and this is our first full committee meeting. But nevertheless, it has been an action-packed January, so thank you to everybody who has been working hard over Christmas and the New Year and into this first month of the year. Thank you to all members who've submitted advanced questions, particularly on information items. It's been really helpful. This agenda is packed with some quite substantive items, even though they're not just for decision, they're for information. So it's been even more helpful to have the questions in advance to allow officers to prepare their thoughts. So thank you very much. Also, Zoe's kept a very close eye on paper publication this time, which you should have found better. People should have got electronic papers on Friday the 16th. And then as soon as your local post allowed, the Monday or the Tuesday of the following week, certainly mine came out in the middle of Wild Essex on Tuesday the 20th. So hopefully you did get them. But if there were further problems, if you can let Zoe know, they will keep trying to iron that out. Minutes came as a supplementary pack. Electronically, because of various delays in the Town Clerk's office. There are some hard copies for people in the room if you want the copies of the minutes. And you'll have seen that whereas there's been some rationalisation of papers, and given the extent of the agenda, it is reduced in terms of pages, there is still some work to go on that. And so he's done as much as she can, but with officers often quite a long rolling programme of leave, it hasn't been possible for all of what we wanted there to be incorporated, but we are making our way with that. So thank you, Zoe. And also, in terms of page numbers, the information page numbers are given on the information pack itself and not on the main agenda pack. And that's just something that happens across the Town Clerk with all the committees. And finally, just a word in terms of managing the meeting. One of our substantive items comes in non-public at item 24 to make sure that we get to that with sufficient time for discussion. Please just bear in mind that if we've had advanced questions and so on, then if we can keep to that and you're satisfied with your email replies, then that will help us get to one of our substantive items. So thank you, Town Clerk. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. At item 1, we have received apologies from Alderman Sir Nicholas Lyons, David Sales, Gregory Lawrence and Philip Woodhouse. Are there any others I should be aware of?
No, I can't see anything. Just to add to that you will notice that Jules isn't with us, and that's because her mother died about 10 days ago. So I'm sure on behalf of the committee, you'd like to take this opportunity to send our condolences to Jules. And we will be doing our best to try to put up the charity slides at the right moment, but we may not be able to do that today. Town Clerk, any further member declarations?
Thank you, Chair. I have not received notice of declarations unless any members wish to make any now.
Anyone? No, not seeing anyone. Thank you very much. So with the minutes, obviously for decision, as already explained, they're in the supplementary pack. But if we can take those together for accuracy and any matters arising that are not on the agenda, please. No, not seeing anything. Good. Okay. Now, I'm going to pass to Town Clerk for item 4. It says the annual review of the terms of reference, page 7 to 10 for decision. What we have agreed in advance, both the Deputy Chair and myself agree with Zoe that it doesn't make very much sense to change and update terms of reference now before we go through the completed charity review, when there will undoubtedly be changes to terminology, if not the actual essence of what we're doing. So, Zoe, did you want to add anything there?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think you've covered it. So yeah, this annual review of the terms of reference is a standard one that's done across the corporation, but there's going to be a broader review of the terms of reference as part of the Natural Environment Charities Review, and that would also need to go through PNR and court. So as discussed, we thought it made sense to take any amendments as part of the broader review.
Good, thanks. So everyone happy with that? Everyone agree with that? Okay, good, lots of nods. Thank you very much. Right, going on to item 5, and I'm going to pass over to Heinz here, just for information for those following up, particularly from call over. Heinz has confirmed that we can call this item Landscape Recovery and Resilience with Carbon Removals Programme in brackets. If you remember, what we've been wanting to show it is us moving away from a pure focus on carbon removals to looking at wider landscape resilience. So Heinz, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to provide an update on the new stage 0 river restoration proposal we will be looking at. First, you might recall that we did consider doing a feasibility study on the reintroduction of beavers, and after doing a site visit with a consultant and various other experts, we came to a conclusion that this is not a feasible proposal and to discontinue it. Some of the reasons are highlighted there. The first one, implementation cost would be very high, as well as the management cost in the long term, but also significantly the change in government policy to prioritize free releases. In other words, non-fenced releases has gained favour. So the likelihood of us getting statutory consent to do a fenced enclosure would be really difficult, as well as considering the site constraints such as the Tudor Pond and the historical features nearby. So we are proposing to do a feasibility study on stage 0 river restoration. So this is a map of Copt Hall, and the area to the top right is called Longmead. The Tudor Pond and Rickery Wood is just to the left. This is the area that seems very suitable. That's also the area we were considering for beavers. Here is an aerial photo of it. So we've been able to transfer the funding within CAS to look at this feasibility study, to pay for it. So we've got 40k funding from CAS, 25k of that will help us to do the feasibility study. The RFQ is in the process of being written, and we hope to release that to consultants soon for quotations. There'll be 15k for works. That's not a lot, but we are going to explore environmental agency funding and similar types of funding streams. We expect this is going to be a process that will take about a year to do the feasibility study, to get all the statutory permissions, etc., before anything on the ground could realistically be done. There is a potential that we could do it in-house, but that's another conversation for another day. It's the workload would increase, etc., so we might need to look at external funding. Now, the reason for looking at this area, initially, we were looking at Cluden's northwest, this field where I'm hovering my cursor on the screen. We were going to establish a willow car wetland woodland there. It's about just under 2 hectares, but because the area was identified as quite an important rough grassland, we decided not to go with that. So in combination of not doing the willow car in Cluden's and the beaver feasibility study not being viable, this area in Longmead seems to be a very promising opportunity. And there are various benefits that would bring. A larger area. It would restore the historical floodplain that we believed was there when you look at historical maps. So reconnecting the river to its floodplain, allowing natural processes to shape. Of course, there's a carbon benefit as well. Wet woodlands and floodplains sequester a lot more carbon. Biodiversity enhancement, flood resilience, so it provides a storage for floodwaters, and general landscape recovery. So this is the area. And if you looked at the areas I've circled there, you can see from above those are greener, indicating it's slightly wetter in those areas. And especially looking at the hydrological simulation of the area, there is if you allowed the natural flow of water in the indentation, the lowest area, it would flow here. But historically, a ditch was created, and currently the river flows along this ditch, taking it away from the field. So the idea would be to rechannel, allow the water to follow its natural course, but to also create scrapes and ponds and wet woodland in this area. So it would look something like that, but we still need to do the feasibility study where they will propose how it would look and how much we can expand pools, ponds, scrapes, etc. So progression milestones, so completion of the feasibility study and design within the budget, in due course securing external funding to make the project viable, and therefore eventually establish integrated wet woodland and wetland habitats. So this will bring biodiversity benefits, and we will need to evidence that through monitoring and surveys, which we will plan in as part of the feasibility design. Any questions on that proposal?
Any questions on that? No, I don't think. Oh, Ben, your hand's gone up again.
Yes, sorry, Chair. I was just going to go back to beavers as opposed to water bodies. I think that's really clear and it seems like a very sensible way forward. But Heinz, could we go back to the beaver slide? Because I was unclear. We moved quite quickly from one to the other. Are you saying that's now completely written off as a proposal? We're not going to do any further work on that?
Correct, yes.
And in which case, can I ask, I mean, this came to the committee originally. We said we didn't think it was a good idea. Officers suggested it wasn't a good idea. How much have we actually spent on this now from the climate action strategy to get to this stage?
On the beaver feasibility study, we haven't spent anything besides perhaps a day out in the field with a consultant.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Right. Yes. So move on, Heinz, please.
Okay. I've got just a few more slides, just providing an update on the Leaky Dam project. So we've now finally at the outline business case, which was drawn up by the Environment Agency, agreed. So this releases the funding of £200,000, which will soon be released to Essex County Council, acting as the lead local flood authority and our bank, if you like. We've installed about 15% of the 374 leaky dams. All that's been done in-house through various teams. As I mentioned there, we've got the ARBS team, the Keeper team. We've had Epping Forest Volunteers, Epping Forest Heritage Trust, and at some point a balance will need to be delivered through contractors. So in the process of planning how much do we need to reserve for our in-house delivery, and then the balance, the majority will be done by contractors. And of course, we're using materials from the woodland, specifically a lot of timber from the Countryside Stewardship Wood Pasture Restoration Works. There'll be an extensive monitoring strategy to monitor whether the trees are happier, so the moisture in the soil. We'll also do river condition surveys to see how the ditches are changing from before to after the restoration. So we're expecting more vegetation because it's a wetter environment. And we'll also do NDVI, which is looking at it from above, from satellite, looking at the chlorophyll photosynthesis in the trees. Are the trees happier? Is it greener from above? And then engagement, we've got a press release that's been sent around, and that the media team, the press team will release this week. We're working on a short video which should be available and ready for sharing and distribution from next week. And just here as an example of a social media post inviting volunteers to participate in the leaky dam installations. Lastly, Cobb tall hedgerows. Just as a summary and a reminder, we're planting 1.3 kilometers of hedgerows to improve biodiversity and connectivity. Roughly 10,000 native saplings will be planted. We're about a third way through of planting that, with many more planting days planned in the diary. We're using biodegradable vole guards for sustainable protection of the trees. We're using our own wood chip mulch from the forest to provide weed suppression as well as retain moisture in the soil, especially during the dry months. We're mixing in fungi, which provides sort of a symbiotic relationship in the soil that helps the trees to establish. We're going to be deploying a number of remote soil monitoring, moisture monitoring devices so we can see if the trees are drought stressed in the summer, so we know when to respond. We're not just watering for the sake of it. Deer fencing, that's gone in. We also secured £10,000 from Thames Chase as a grant to support this project. And lastly, we're also will be producing, recording video for promotional purposes on the 11th of February when we have a staff planting day coming up. And lastly, there's just an example of a social media post, again, calling out for volunteers to participate. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things from me. That that very, very last point, the 11th of February, that's open to everybody to come up to Copt Hall to help with that planting. And if you want, be on the promotional video. But please, when that comes around to you, if you want to take an opportunity to get involved in that, then please do. And Heinz, I know we've talked about it before, but for the benefit of the committee, when should people start to see some progress from in terms of the change in vegetation as the leaky dams work progresses?
I think it will be pretty quickly. It could be within a year you start seeing more lush vegetation because more water has been held back. Normally for about 2 years' time, but it will take time to develop. It's relatively quickly in terms of environmental change and ecosystem change.
Thank you very much. So Ben and then Chris.
Thanks. I was just going to say on the monitoring, clearly it's got a sort of carbon actions focus, but I think for us it would be particularly good to see the impact of volunteering, what the total cost of the project is, how much, if that were to be provided by a consultant, because we're talking about them filling the gap, and how much volunteers are actually helping us reduce our overall project costs through their help so that we can celebrate that properly.
All volunteers are signing up via Eventbrite. We can also check with our Epping Forest team because they organise their own volunteering days. So yeah, we can go away and.
So this will be built into any impact report.
Yes, we can calculate how many volunteers days we've had.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. Or is that Michael? Oh, sorry, it's Michael. I can't see you, Michael, because of the chair that's in the way. In fact, would somebody mind moving that chair for me, please? Thank you, Andy. Right, Michael, far away.
I thought you wanted me to move my chair so you could see me. But well. Right. The only point that I looked at the list of plantings and so on, and it included privet, which rather surprised me because I always regard that as being a sort of rather, garden type hedging. I mean, hawthorn, blackthorn, hazel, field maple, with all of those, but just a bit surprised about privet. Is privet regarded as being suitable?
The list of species we've chosen have been chosen by the local team, and they are native species. So these are the 5 species they wanted including in the hedgerows specifically. So
thank you, Heinz. So that's directly from the local team, Michael. So we can do a bit more follow-up, but I think that probably answers it.
Yeah, I'll probably talk to the team myself. That's fine. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good. Anything else there? Thank you, Heinz, very much. As always, really interesting projects that we look forward to seeing come to fruition. Right, good. Andrew, I believe you're going to do item 6, the verbal review policy review update.
Indeed, thank you, Chair. So on the screen, hopefully you can see, testing your eyesight, but just to get it all on one screen, I will email this afterwards, so you will get this. So this is 32 policies and procedures listed here, and these have been prioritised in order now. So the first batch is around health and safety. So unsurprisingly, the health and safety policies are deemed the most important. We will have subgroups of staff members from across all 8 open space charities who will look at these. So different individuals across the teams, small groups. We're already working on things like tree safety. So there's a small group of officers from across the open spaces who are working on tree safety. Tree safety is unsurprisingly linked to the extreme weather policy as well. So it's a case of where those policies overlap, making sure that they're looked at the same time. So we now have a priority list. So the key thing now is to create a schedule or a time frame as to when we're going to deliver these in this order, and then when we're going to deliver these back to committee to have them signed off. So we'll be doing it in this order. Bringing them back. And I suppose the final point is just around the sort of homogeneity of those policies. So when you might have a corporate policy, then it might be deemed that we also need a natural environment policy. And then that natural environment policy may have annexes that are site specific. So when can we just have one policy, which is a corporate policy? It's fit for purpose. Let's just stick with that. When do we need a bespoke natural environment one? And when do we need specific annexes that are specific to sites? Or can we just have a broad natural environment policy? So this is the list. This is the priorities. Then we'll have a time frame of when we will bring those back to committee for the committee to sign off.
And the obvious question is, what sort of time frame do you think we're looking at before committee know that this is going to be fully organised?
I would like to think it'll be organised soon. I mean, obviously, this was on my plate and I'm leaving. No, I know. Hold back the tears, Chair. Hold back the tears. But when that new person is in post, I believe that they will take that on board. But the health and safety ones are a priority and they are already in progress, so just to be reassured on that. And also, I should note that this isn't a case of we're not compliant or there's legal gaps. This is more a case of the policies are due to review, and a lot of it is making sure tree safety, for example, we might have a tree safety policy at the Commons, we might have one at Epping, we might have one at Hampstead, we might have one for city gardens. You know, we've got policies all over the place. So it's that homogeneity. Where does it make sense to bring those together? So it's not necessarily about gaps in terms of that compliance. It's more about the efficiencies of those policies and where it makes sense to bring them together.
Excellent. Thank you. About the privet and it being a native hedgerow and woodland plant and a fantastic pollinator. So thank you both for clarifying that. Emily.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify that for some of these policies, there is a dependency on the work of other departments as well. So the filming policy, for example,
Absolutely.
was something that we, were very keen to progress, and we've had talks with the filming team, but actually they're developing their own policy, around kind of filming and how they work with other departments as well. So perhaps we can highlight where there are other dependencies.
I was just going to say that would be really useful, I think, where other departments are involved as well. Ben.
I was just going to say, Chair, just to challenge the sort of final batch and the final item on the final batch, which is around licensing events. I think given the number of issues operationally that certainly you and I pick up on as Chair and Deputy Chair, perhaps we actually need to bring that particular item forward if officers could give that some consideration. And perhaps we could add this to an action log so that we actually are starting to see some progress on this over the next, 6 months as the new Deputy Director and the rest of the team bed in.
Point taken, Ben. Thank you. Yeah, and Andrew's nodding to take away and pass that on. Thank you. So anything else there? No, good. Thank you very much. Now, member visit walks and talks might seem like a very strange item to have on here, but there is a specific background for this that affects the whole of Epping Forest and the Commons, which is why it's in this general housekeeping area. But Jacqueline's going to speak to this, what the background is, but then what sort of solutions we need to be looking at. So over to Jacqueline first. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a suggested revision to our traditional Saturday visit, with a couple of options for further discussion potentially. Remembrances, well, the centralised funding that funds primarily the of concern is the coach travel for the visit, which we find very helpful to take members around our sort of the variety of sites in one go, is no longer being funded. And I know that members that attended the last visit, we managed between a couple of cars. Which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work depending on the variety of sites that we go to, and we kept the agenda fairly simple for that reason. What I would propose is that, because I get a lot of requests for from local councillors, from local stakeholders about local issues or areas of concern, I am minded to set up a variety of site-based visits where any stakeholder with an interest could come, and that could be something that members of this committee join in on. So let's say something between 4 and half a dozen visits a year, to look at particular area of the forest, and to talk through those issues along with other stakeholders, and to not have the Saturday visits anymore. I will be doing those visits anyway, which members will always be welcome to attend. I am also happy to continue to do the 2 Saturday visits a year, but it would be a more kind of limited agenda, and so it's really just a chance to hear strength of feeling around that.
Yes, so just a couple of comments first. For the Commons, things like Dawny Wood, the showpiece events wouldn't be affected. So this is outside of that. So these are the Saturday committee visits. Personally, I think this could be a great opportunity if you take the planting on the 11th of February, for example, to make that open to members, to be able to come along. And then Jacqueline saying that transport could be arranged where people needed transport is very different to an organised booking of a coach on a Saturday. Likewise, I think we'd got to the point with lunches anyway, where lunches were much more relaxed. And certainly, if I think over 20 years, quite different to 2 decades ago, then I think the world has changed from that point of view. So even if we do things on a Saturday, to change the psychology around that, to do a walk and talk for a couple of hours and that's it, with a coffee and whatever, it's looking at different possibilities. If you look through the list of events, volunteer events, and lectures and possibilities anyway, there is a huge amount going on across the whole of the Epping Forest and Commons, which if we get slightly tighter about advertising in our events diary, and again I will say when we get to that point today, everybody is welcome on any of the activities, but please let officers know so that they can pick you up from the station, or have the light lunch there or whatever, then I think quite a lot is possible. The one thing that the gap that doesn't naturally get filled is the private business that we might do in the private part of a walk and talk with officers, that then very ably feeds into the meeting when we have the meeting. So that's something that I think we'd be really quite grateful to hear people's thoughts about. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time. I'll take the 3 people that I've got down, 4 actually, which is Ben, Nick, George and Paul. But then if other people out of those initial thoughts have got points, if you can just let myself and or Jacqueline know them, and then what we'll sit down and look at what the possibilities are and try to map something out across the year. So let's go to Ben first.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to say, I mean, I'm particularly mindful of Saturday visits, which frankly are are only open to working members. That's the only opportunity to really get involved currently, unless you're taking time out of work. And I think we should be really cognizant of the fact that we have tried to diversify the membership on the committee, and there is benefits in doing that. So I think Saturday visits are important to retain in some way, shape or form. I obviously encourage members to attend the other volunteering and other activities that you've referenced. And often, you know, that is usually just you and I and or a Verdra. So, you know, I think members can take that as they wish. I think coach travel, fine. I think frankly this should be an efficiency call though. If we have members who can't afford to attend events, then I think, you know, any charity would cover basic expenses for those things. There are not many charities that require such huge geographic differences in attending some of the events, from, you know, Surrey to Buckinghamshire out into Essex and across London. So I think we have to think about, you know, how we do support members, and perhaps if a small minibus is the best option, then we should consider how we fund that. And on lunches, I think, gosh, you know, we've certainly cut that back to a sandwich and a cup of coffee for some time. So I don't think that's a particularly big deal. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And certainly something along the model of the cultural visits, which the education unit do, I think is well worth looking at moving forward. So I think those are all good points. Nicholas?
Thank you, Chair. Maybe something that might crop up in non-public, but I wondered if in this particular year there might be specific site visits to area parcels of land that have feasibility studies or further analysis being undertaken as to their use. I'm thinking of complementary land.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if there would be a programme of specific visits to enable members who are not familiar with individual sites to understand the rationale for whatever's being proposed.
Absolutely, and that was in our mind because the Copt Hall visit that we tried was a huge success. So I'm not saying that we would necessarily do something on that scale, but I think I could quite envisage that working for specific sites. And I know Jacqueline supports it as well. The walks and talks on the ground that we do are always really good, because if you're standing in front of something and somebody's giving you the information, it's much easier to actually see it and assess it. So I think that's a very good point. Then George next, and then Paul. George.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for my benefit and the benefit of others, the last Saturday visit we did, where we took in Thaden,
Yeah,
looked at the benches.
it was very good.
It was very good. We did the ponding, quite near to Warren, and a couple of other things. Although really said that they weren't, they were quite poorly attended, unfortunately, but they were very informative. What category would they fall into? What you're referring to at the moment?
And I think that's the question that we need to throw back at Jacqueline, and Jacqueline can put into the mix. And certainly I think that the gap that is there when you look at the wider programme is that specific committee, real in-depth discussion. Forget how many people go. I think it's really important to have that opportunity, but whether that always needs to be a Saturday, whether it can be a week in the summer, can it be from 6 to 8 in the evening, like the consultative groups do now, a lot of them really quite successfully. Can we try some different models? But nevertheless, I think what you're saying is important. And then Paul.
I think it's quite important. While I see that there's merit in us meeting up with other stakeholders and local councillors, I think it's quite important that we as a committee have the ability to meet with officers and form our own opinion on sometimes quite key topics before we start talking with stakeholders. We have to function as a committee, as ourselves, looking at this stuff before we start dealing with other people.
Yes, I agree. And effectively what we're saying, Paul, is that because the remembrances now will not fund the minibus, the transport, and because we're needing to cut back because it will be financed by the charity for food and drink and so on, is how can we do those things of value but in a more imaginative way? And in most cases it could be the cost of the travel on the tube out to a pickup point with 2 or 3 of the vehicles picking people up, but it does mean that we might not be able to do so much in a morning, for example. So we might have to be just a bit creative. But I think all of those ideas really, really welcome. Deputy Chair, last one, and then we'll move on.
Just a really quick word, which just particularly given we're in the public domain. I mean, the purpose of the Saturday visits has always been for members to see what was coming before committee in the papers,
Yes,
to
exactly.
see and experience that process. I think what has changed over the last couple of years certainly is there are lots of joint committee reports. So something that comes to us for information or for debate or for decision, the decision is then taken by another committee. So actually we've extended out the visit invitations over time to either the National Environment Board or RASC or PNR members, and that has grown. I think what we need is some clarity on what the visit should be, because there is lots of benefits in each of those different scenarios, but they all come with different cost packages.
Absolutely. So I think, Jacqueline, you got quite a lot of material out of that, which is what Jacqueline was wanting. Yeah, good. Thank you, everybody, very much. So moving on to item 8, which is the update, the verbal report update for the revenue and capital budgets. And I believe Marguerite's going to start off and then Emily's going to pick up. Marguerite.
Thank you, Chair. Just as an update, really, further to consultations and discussions at the Natural Environment Committees, the January Finance Committee has approved the grant funding model principles and arrangements, which are now due to go to the Policy and Resources Committee in February for final approval and application from the 1st of April 2026. The Finance Committee have also delegated authority to co-sponsors to finalise the formal framework document, which details those principles in consultation with committee chairs and deputy chairs. If you remember, at the last committee, this committee approved 26-27 budgets within the budget estimate envelope, but expressed significant concern about Epping Forest's use of reserves and about the sufficiency of the baseline going forward. As a result of this, and with also the feedback that we received from the Efficiency and Performance Working Party, a provisional ask was made to Finance Committee in the grant funding model paper in relation to all of the natural environment charities for an enhancement to the baseline resource envelope to deliver the baseline core operational activities safely in line with statutory compliance and subject to business cases supported by health and safety risk assessment and a workforce efficiency review. The bulk of this relates to the North London open spaces in terms of its staffing model, which have been previously addressed for Epping Forest, but that enhancement, there is an enhancement element for Epping Forest, and the Commons, which I'll refer to in a second. So half of the provisional ask was for baseline increase, and the other half was for transformational funding subject to business cases to support the transition to the grant funding model, particularly looking at income generation and asset replacement, as well as building up free reserves. The Finance Committee approved a one-year contingency with those funding proposals to be agreed under delegated authority, subject to approval of business cases by co-sponsors for the Charity Review Project in consultation with the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Finance Committee. For Epping, we provided provisional numbers, and 129,000 was put forward for the additional baseline, with another focus on vehicle replacement, so 415,000 on vehicle replacement, and a project for supporting the biodiversity net gain income generation of 50,000. The Commons focus was a baseline enhancement for Burnham Beaches of about 40,000 and one-off vehicle replacements for Ashley Common, West Wickham and Colston Commons, totalling 150. In addition to that, we put forward a proposal to build the free reserves for charities not able to do so immediately to support that transition to the grant funding model, and that totaled around 400,000. All of these numbers were provisional, subject to detailed business cases, and if in conversations with superintendents, budget holders, it changes slightly and the priorities change, then that will be put forward in the business cases themselves. So we're now working through the details of those and collecting information and beginning the health and safety risk assessment review. I'll also be beginning with colleagues the reserves policy paper to come to this committee in March, I think it's the 24th of March, so that we can discuss in detail the policies, the reserves policy going forward, which is something we discussed during the grant funding model paper. I think that's it.
Thank you, Marguerite, very much. Go to Emily next.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. Thank you, Chair. Actually, it was very comprehensive, but if there are any questions from members, obviously we're happy to answer those.
sorry, my microphone keeps going on, for the way that you've picked this up coming out of the last meeting and run with this. And, you know, I think people feel much happier. Jacqueline, did you want to add anything from Epping Forest point of view?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm meeting with Marguerite this week to start working up the detail of business plans and what our actual final ask is.
Excellent, thank you. So, Ben.
Just a really quick question, Chair, and thank you for everybody for their efforts. This has been a hugely complicated issue, but we're really getting much better transparency on these as we go through the review process. The one issue I just wanted to check, and I think I know the answer, but Marguerite, can we just confirm for Epping Forest and the Commons, there are no staffing implications in the additional ask? That's all North London open spaces, because if there are, a one-year settlement doesn't help us solve those staffing issues because we need to permanently hire. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So there are no, it's all non-staffing for Epping Forest and the Commons, but the paper, particularly on baseline, although it's a one-off contingency that has been put aside, we've still got the opportunity to make the case for additional baseline funding, because obviously that has to be ongoing. Thank you.
Excellent, good. So good luck with the discussions again this coming week, and we'll go from there, but certainly looking much, much more positive. Thank you, everybody. So looking very much more positive, item 9, and over to Matt and to Katie here. This is the cyclical works programme. I do want to give a little bit of background here. It's in your information pack, page 3 to 6, and we have allocated some time on this because there have been building concerns, and concerns certainly emanating from the last meeting, that not every member of the committee was fully up with the way in which the cyclical works programme worked, what seemed to be some fairly straightforward answers to some of our problems on the surface of things, on deeper dealing didn't necessarily they either weren't the problems that we thought they were, or leading to more questions. So conscious of the fact that people in their role, particularly now as charity trustees, that element of the role, want to be really, really certain about where this is fitting in and make appropriate decisions about financial pressures moving forward. Then Matt has very, very kindly put this report together. So we will take the report as read. We're not going to go over the report, but Matt's going to make a few extra points. I then think Katie and possibly Peter are going to come in on it. And then if there are still other questions in terms of just members feeling that they're comfortable in the whole of this area, then we'll move on. So Matt, can we come to you first, or are we going to Katie first? Who are we starting with? Katie first.
I'll set the scene. So, and this is very much in response to a discussion that we had at the last committee, particularly around, again, members just wanting a bit more oversight, a bit more assurance on how we are managing the assets within the charity's remit. So this paper is really a snapshot. So it is a subset of this work. So I want to assure you that this is almost, we're kind of dipping your toe in the water with this. It is part of a broader reset that we are undertaking with the Environment Department in terms of how we are gripping, managing our assets as a department, but also linked to this, obviously, the relationship with the City Surveyor team. And obviously Peter is here, and we've been working right across the City Surveyor team to do that. And as part of that piece of work, we got some transformation funding corporately, and we have hired in Matt, who is very capable as our head of estates and is actually leading on this work, and has actually been spending quite a bit of time right across the department, but particularly in the natural environment spaces, to really, first of all, get an understanding of what assets we've got. And trust me, we've got a diversity of assets in the environment department. We've got 400 assets, over 400, from car parks to cow sheds. So it's a real mix, actually, and getting a really good baseline understanding of where those assets are, what work is needed on them, and understanding where city surveyors are currently at in terms of cyclical works, but also other capital works has been a really key part of that. It is a complex piece of work. The cyclical works program, which we are reporting here today, as I say, is a subset, but it's an area where we've had quite a bit of success, I think, in terms of resetting that relationship. And Matt's been working quite hard on this. So it's a good example of how this is working. Please be assured that we will be working up a broader kind of asset review and just a regular kind of pattern of how we are updating this committee and providing you the assurance that you want and certainly that we want in terms of our assets. But I'll hand over to Matt on the specific
Matt,
work.
thank you very much. So it keeps going on and off. Try again. That's
There we
it.
go. Yeah, so just to follow on from what Katie's saying, we're doing a full review of the wider environment portfolio. So this includes how we manage the assets from a digital perspective as well. But then also for cyclical works, we've taken forward some probably quite strategic projects quite early on in the program. So project lodges being one of those, which includes 7 or 10 lodges in total that we're taking forward that have been vacant, and turning those into revenue generating assets. So yeah, it's been quite a transformational program so far, and we're going to continue that momentum going forward.
Thank you very much, and for your role in that. And I think then we're coming to Peter.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for inviting us to your committee. We did prepare some slides. My colleagues in the room, Kev Regan, who heads up the surveying and engineering projects. I don't know if those slides are available.
They're just
Zoe.
coming, I think, Peter.
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave it to Kev just to go through the initial slides, just to give the committee a flavour of how it works, the governance and how we're reporting it. Then I'll come back at the end and talk about the future if I can. So
Excellent, thank you.
If you could come in, Kev, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pete, and thank you, Chair. We just prepared these few slides just really in answers to some questions raised at call over. So I'll be as concise as I can, just to set the scene in terms of the current 5-year cyclical works programme. All 3,000 projects have been pre-agreed with members. And then when we unpick the layers with specific reference to Epping Forest and the Commons, prioritisation of those projects would be a consultative process that takes place between the city surveyor and the site teams. So decisions are, as I say, jointly made between the city surveyor and the colleagues in Epping Forest and the Commons. And these decisions will be based around operational constraints, any emerging opportunities that Matt mentioned about the project lodges, any statutory need for those works to happen as a priority, funding and capacity. So I think, the big takeaway, it's a collective agreement which ensures the transparency and accountability. The process for that agreement is in the case of Epping Forest, it's a monthly coordination meeting with colleagues. And then in respect to the City Commons, that happens on a quarterly basis. And during those meetings, we cover things like progress, spend, and any risks. The content in the meetings is formal. We capture any actions that are required. So on this slide here, I don't expect you to be able to read the detail, but just the top left image just shows one of the roadmaps that we would prepare and issue at the meeting, propose at the meeting for agreement. So it'll just show when the design process will start for each project line, and then follow on by with when the works will start on site. Moving over to the top right, it'd just be it's just another dashboard report that we would discuss at meetings, and this just captures the spend position as to where we are versus the forecast. Moving on to the bottom left, just an example of a decision register, and likewise on the right we'd have an action log there. Moving on, so regular updates be aligned to site priorities, and it's drawn from the roadmap and the dashboards that we've just seen. And in addition to that, the programme team within the City Surveyors Department would often provide a short narrative to superintendents to feed into their committee reports and what have you. Throughout this process and working with colleagues in natural environment, as Matt said, we did identify project lodges as a priority. And we successfully procured that project, and works are now on site due to complete this financial year. Just list out some other key projects that are forthcoming across this committee. So we've got the Temple and Grotto, got the Ashton Common Office, Rewire and Internal Works, and Merlewood Estate Buildings. So those projects have been identified through the process that I've been talking about. And just to wrap up from my side, just in terms of where we're at in terms of delivery, We expect to meet the forecast spend for the current financial year. Just to make the point that funding availability is not a constraint to the delivery across the CWP. If there are any risks, it's related to supply chain issues or perhaps internal capacity issues. But we've got mitigations in place. Like I mentioned, in terms of supply chain piece, we've broadened out the supply chain using some of our incumbent IFM providers and accessing some new frameworks, which has also ensured value for money. So yeah, I think on that note, I'll probably hand back to Pete just to talk about a little bit about what the future funding might look like.
Great, thank you. So Peter, back to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kev. This is just very, very high level, but just to give some members some background to CWP who may not be fully aware. I've been at the city for about 13 years now, and we used to have a thing called AWP, which used to fund about £6 million per year for all operational portfolio. And then they made a decision about, I don't know, about 8 or so years ago to move to CWP, and we used to get about 12 to 14 million pounds a year. And there's a priority matrix which is used by a peer review group, which is chaired by the Chamberlains, to select which projects get funded. And mostly it was always health and safety type projects or statutory compliance. So the nice to haves, the fabrics and the necessary projects never really got done, and that created a backlog and this so-called bow wave. So what we did in City Surveyors for about 4 years, we were fighting to get funding for this backlog, and we eventually got it, which came to about 130 million, which dealt with the backlog, which is around 60 million, but at the same time we got funding for the next 3 years. Those 3 years come to an end in 26-27, although we've got some more years funding approved to deliver it, because we're in year 2 of a 5-year program, if that makes sense. So what we've done, we've broken that down into Epping Forest and the Commons for the sake of this committee, and this slide just gives you an insight into what the next years from 27-28, what's in our forward maintenance plans, which we will be going forward to RASC and resource allocation finance to get funding for. So you can see in 27-28 it's 1.2 million, 28-29 609, so and so on and so forth. And the deputy chair asked the question, and I think this committee discussed this query at one of your last committees. Does the funding remain in place into the future? Well, this is what the funding this is what the requirements look like into the future, but we'd still need to go to Finance Committee, RASC, resource allocation to get that funding approved for it. And there's a bid going in October of this year. The chair of finance did commit to always funding this amount of money going forward, because he never wanted a backlog to occur again. So I'm very hopeful and positive that they're going to give the funding. But again, in the context of the recent central government funding reductions, etc., I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll be putting it forward. But this just gives you an idea of what we know about your estate and what's required over the next 20 odd years. And we'll be doing our very best to get that funding. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's really, really helpful. And the point of asking you to do this today, the three of you, was to really help clarify for members who are not so close to how this all works, to have a level of understanding, to feel confident moving forward at the time when we're all about trying to move forward. One technical question: have you got any problem with members having these slides?
Not at all, no.
Excellent. So Zoe will arrange for the slides to go around, which I think will be very helpful. And then if we can keep questions to an absolute bare minimum, please, from people that are not as close to this as others. Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. A very short point. It's very helpful, and we're looking at this from the point of view of let's say a trustee, from the charity's point of view, where other departments such as City Surveyors are doing this very important work for us. I would like to request that we see relatively frequent visibility of this, because going forward, I'd like to build up an understanding of expenditure, how we're performing against budget and how much we're spending on this, just in able to fulfil my obligations as a member.
And you've actually taken the words out of my mouth. You could have been a fly on the wall when I was saying this to the team, which is why I wanted this introduced at this meeting. And then at future, not all the time, but at future points moving forward, I think very, very important that all members, particularly acting as trustees, are really, really confident of the way in which the process works. If we can go to Ben and then back to George, and then that'll be it for this item, I'm afraid. Ben?
Thanks, Chair. I think that one of the key takeaways for this committee is that actually we must have better oversight of City's estate as a whole and understand the financial circumstances of the estate, which is funding a lot of the asset maintenance work. I also think it's really important, Peter, just to split out the difference between Epping Forest in terms of its sort of charitable object versus its buffer land, complementary land responsibilities, because at the moment I think those sums are commingled in your 20-year projections. I know some work has been done, and Matt just alluded to that, to expand beyond just physical built assets and look beyond that now to fencing, signage, even digital assets, as we heard earlier, to think about how that gets built in to show the whole cost of actually operating some of these spaces. The questions I really had, one of which was around the sign off of asset maintenance work and the auditing process of that, because I think what we have certainly seen over recent years that either assets haven't been surveyed for whatever reason and they've just, you know, essentially deteriorated, which has reduced the charity's ability to do anything with those assets. So how do we make sure we're staying at a reasonable level and staying on top of asset maintenance, and how do we go beyond the minimum standards, because there is such demand across the corporation at the moment to do work that often what gets approved is a basic minimum standard. We're not going beyond that at the moment. So if we're looking at 20 years, are we just looking at minimum standards, or are we going above and beyond that in any way, shape or form, and what do we do to sort of take a longer term view of that? The last thing is just on overspends. You know, we regularly see in our budget that the City Surveyors Department has overspent budget, and there is a sort of reallocation at year end, which throws our own budget out of the window. How do we start to show financial constraints that sit behind some of this work? Thank you.
Thank you. If we can hold those for the moment, go to George for his question and then back to you, Peter, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question is, are we using local SMEs to carry out these cyclical works? Reason I ask is obviously we do like to keep a really good, close working relationship with our stakeholders, and something like that would help no end. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that expresses conversation of a lot of people on the committee and also at the Commons, I know, the use of the local workforce. So, Peter, back to you for fairly brief answers for the moment, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So I've just jotted them down here. So regarding, I think we need to make differentiation between planned preventative maintenance and cyclical maintenance. Planned preventative maintenance, the budget sits within City Surveyors local risk, and yes, we struggle with the constraints of that and tend to overspend. But what we're doing, we've put the brakes on them this year, and we've got more financial monitoring mechanisms in place. But unfortunately, when we have a piece of reactive work, which you have no choice that you've got to do that piece of work, then inevitably that can create some overspends. So we're just trying to balance that at the moment, and we're working with Chamberlains to try and just switch the budgets around a little bit, because we find in city fund, for example, and versus state, maybe one is overspent and one's underspent, so something's just not right there. So we need to just equal that out. So we're working with Chamberlains with that. Regarding overspend of CWP, well, the CWP funding has already been approved, and it is on a call off from the medium-term financial plan. We wouldn't overspend on that, but if we underspend, that money goes back to the central pot, and then the peer review group, which is chaired by the Chamberlains, then they reallocate that money. And there's a priority matrix which Natural Environment have a place on the board, that peer review group, to sort of argue the toss, and people can put in bids for new projects. Asset sign off and asset maintenance, we carry out sort of 10% DIP audits. We have a building surveying and engineering team, small team, in fact, just a couple of people who specialise in carrying out those audits. So we check upon the works of our contractors. That leads me on to the final question around local SMEs. We would love to use local SMEs, but at the moment we utilise the frameworks that we have in place, which is measured term contract frameworks. We have a couple of main contractors. We have been working with Matt recently, because Matt's got some great ideas about introducing local SMEs, and if we can find a way to introduce them within the public sector procurement regulations, then of course we will. So leave that one with us. I'll take that away as a favourable item from members of this committee, and we'll see what we can do to drive that one forward.
That's really excellent. Thank you very, very much. Now, I'm conscious of timing here. So, Ben, is that a very quick
I was just
point?
going to say, Chairman, if I could give members assurance in my separate capacity as Chair of Procurement, that we are just in the process of updating the policy, which will specifically look at local contracting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to the three of you for coming along to do that today. Really, really helpful. And I think to take the verger's point, an ongoing conversation and coming back to the committee so that we really get to know you and the way in which the team is working, I think will be really helpful. So please stay or go as you wish, but thank you very much. Right, senior officer recruitment, item 10, which is in the information pack, page 7 to 17. Emily's going to give us an update on this because there's been a few changes since that paper. Emily.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the proposal obviously was outlined in the paper, but as you say, there's been a couple of changes. So firstly, we did try and appoint an interim internally, but didn't actually manage to find anyone suitable. So what we decided to do was redistribute the kind of priority areas of work between the senior leadership team and the natural environment division, and just sort of looking at, what was an urgent priority. So we've done that as an interim. But also expedited the recruitment of the permanent replacement. So brought that forward and advertised the role just before Christmas. And I'm happy to report that there was a huge amount of interest, and we had 160 applications, all of which were external.
Huge.
So that
Christmas and New Year, it was a real surprise.
Yeah, that kept me very busy shortlisting. But we've now got a very kind of strong A-list kind of shortlist for the roles. We'll be interviewing next Monday, the first stage interviews. We've got 7 kind of interview slots, and we've got 5 confirmed so far, but we've got a good kind of reserve list as well. So we'll definitely be interviewing seven candidates and looking to take forward ideally 3 to the second interviews, and obviously we'll be involving members in that second stage of the recruitment process. But some really strong candidates from a wide range of backgrounds, but but looking very positive so far, Chair. So that's the update.
So really good news, and we'll obviously keep members updated as and when things happen. So we're now moving into Burnham Beeches and Commons business. Just a reminder that we are below the level of chorusy for non-Epping Forest business, but we do have chorusy now. Right, the message has changed. Thank you very much. So I was going to say I didn't think there was a huge amount that would be affected. So Andrew, as in Andrew Impey, I think you're going to do the follow-up here. For those of you looking in the information packet, it's page 19 to 24, which we will take as read, and it makes very good reading. We have Andy here, also from the Commons. Huge amount going on, a huge amount accomplished, but Andrew's going to make a few comments.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll keep it brief, mindful of the agenda. Just 2 months here, November and December, that were reported against a couple of winter months, and I think it's fair to say that maybe a lot of our visitors that come to our sites probably see winter as a bit of a fallow period. Not much to do, just bumbling along through the winter periods. But actually, I'm sure many people around the table realise that there's a huge amount that goes on during the winter. A lot of really, really fundamental and important work goes on. Things like, as is described in the paper, a lot of scrub management, but other things like heather seeding, glade clearance, coppicing, haloing around our ancient trees, fungal forests, tree safety inspection. So really, really fundamental work that goes on in the winter. So busy teams out there. And again, as you all know, so much of this work would not happen if it weren't for the army of volunteers, their passion, their dedication, their commitment, supporting our officers on the ground to get this vital work done during the winter period. So I hope that comes across in the report, the amount of work that goes on site. And just the final second point really is just at the last committee, there was a call for the report to kind of make reference to maybe a few more strategic milestones or objectives that have been achieved. And section 9 is sort of tiptoeing our way towards that. It's only 2 months reporting, so there's not huge amounts to say, but that's the direction of travel. The head rangers are very clear going forward that they want to not just tell you about what they've done, but why they're doing it, why it's so important, why it's fundamental, and the objectives that they're achieving. So section 9 is just a nod to that going forward, Chair.
Thank you very much. And as you say, the work of and with volunteers, hugely impressive. And I really enjoyed my wreath making experience. There is some real talent down there at the Commons, and also appreciating the first steps towards a real clarity in terms of linking up with business and strategic plans. Andy, since you are here, did you want to add anything specifically?
I don't think so. Thank you, Chair.
But thank you to you and the teams for all that you're doing from all of us. And to make Andrew really embarrassed, because I've been teasing him for ages now, I now have a formal vote of thanks to read out to you, because in the city we can't not do a formal vote of thanks, and this will be minuted. So would the committee please join me in thanking Andrew Impey for his hard work, dedication and commitment to Epping Forest and the Commons, and to the Natural Environment Division. Andrew has made a real impact in the time he's been with us, helping lead the Commons team through a period of transition and change, leading the development of a new strategy for the learning team, and driving forward major projects, including the carbon removals project and the Rookery Wood Reservoir project. Andrew's passion for conservation has been evident throughout his time with us, and his ability to rapidly learn about the complexities of the corporation and navigate its governance is laudable. He has been a pleasure to work with and will be greatly missed. We wish him well for the future and hope that he enjoys his new job as the Chief Executive of the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. And I do think you have won the lottery with the name there. I think that's lovely. So I'm sure the committee will join me in those congratulations and thanks. So a round of applause to Andrew, please. Thank you very much. So did anyone want to raise any questions or comments there? I think we do appreciate that you're in an interim period, and certainly for whoever comes in, I think there's going to be a huge amount of work to do, and will probably be much less kind in terms of the grilling heading their way. But thank you, everybody. Okay, so moving on to the summary to Joe Hill, who I think is online, the summary risk management update report, and this is for information, page 25 to 37 in the pack. And a reminder that as charity trustees, essentially we need to be comfortable that officers have identified the risk and are mediating against the risk. I know you got in an advance question about Burnham Beeches and trees on the risk register, which I know you have answered, but perhaps you could answer that publicly as well, Joe, please. So over to you.
Chair, yes, so this is a summary risk register for members to see an overview of what's going on with the risks at the moment. A detailed report will be presented to the next committee. The question was about why there's not a risk on tree events or failure on the Burnham Beeches and Stoke Common risk register. The Tree Failure Act for Burnham Beeches is covered within the pests and diseases risk on that register. I will liaise with the head ranger when we review the risk before the next updates committee. Ultimately, it's the head rangers who own and assess the risks, but we'll have a look at whether that should be added on, and I'll speak with Martin about that before the next report.
Thank you, Joe. So given that this is for information, we do have a question, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we keep having the same conversation, unfortunately, which is about, is the management team, and I'm sort of looking at the director, executive director level, are you genuinely challenging what is in the risk registers and making sure it's applied consistently? Because, each time we get this data, we are challenging it, and it's us that's drawing it out. Has someone actually done that homework?
Andrew, do you want to answer that?
Sorry, I was still following
Still
the
on
grandeur of what you said
But
previously.
the challenge of the
I mean, I would just say to members that Joe and I do meet regularly to go.
It keeps it. Apologies
Oh,
to those
sorry.
online. These keep going
Yeah.
off today.
We do meet regularly to go through all the risk registers and try to make sure they're aligned with each other. Obviously, it is a very kind of movable feast at the moment with, with changes with the Natural Environment Charity Review, corporate changes. But, we do have that process in place. And but clearly any recommendations or suggestions that members make, we will take those on board. But we do have that formal process of review.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, there was a couple of other follow-ups. One was about specifically the budget pressures unlikely and decreasing, which I'm not sure is accurate. I think, I'm not sure members would agree that the pressure of finances within certainly cities of state is not in a decreasing position. And the final point was just on the negative impacts of development and encroachment across the commons. I'd suggest that we aren't accepting that as listed as the status. We're actively seeking to reduce it at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is to do, Joe, when I checked with you, with this being a summary report, and that by the time we get to the
it's in the
full
summary
information, yeah.
So they're the statuses in the summary
Joe,
report,
yeah,
which I'm saying is incorrect.
Joe.
The question about the budget pressures is related to the Ashford Common Risk Register. Again, I'll speak with Andy on that and we'll have a look at it before when we review the risks again. And the one about development and encroachment being accepted, that's been accepted because the hydrangeas feel that they've got the risk to the lowest level possible at the moment. And in fact, that risk, the equivalent risk for Epping Forest and on Emily's Cross Divisional Risk Register is also accepted. It's not, they're not doing anything, but it's that they've got it to the lowest level within their power at the moment. But again, we will review it before next time.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it needs review. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, well, we're saying it is going to be reviewed, so good, thank you. So moving on to item 13, the operational finance progress report, page 39 to 72 in the information pack. Again, take as read. Clem is going to just speak very quickly to this, Clem.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So item 13 is for information and then provides an update on the financial position of the individual commons charities for 25-26 to the end of September 2025. The report is divided into separate sections for each of the commons charities and provides updates for each charity in terms of the revenue budget for 25-26 and the latest position on issues such as the outstanding debt arrears and charity reserve funds, and happy to answer any questions.
Yes, I mean, I know there was a question from the Deputy Chair about demonstrating the debt write-off, but really I just wanted to make the point that this paper, if nothing else, demonstrates the strain of keeping costs within budget. And I think that's the big takeaway here. So to say thank to the teams on the ground that are really, bearing the brunt end of this. But Clem, do you want to answer that question about the debt write-off?
I mean, I haven't received notification of a...
Ben, do you want to ask it?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, I mean, the point is, so on the graph, Clem, that we've got, it suggests that there are dips in debt write-off, and what's not clear is whether or not it is debt write-off or whether or not we've actually got the income in. It doesn't show the differentiation between the two, whether or not something just gets signed off by the Finance Committee, which is reducing the charity's debt, or whether or not we've actually received cash in the door as a settlement for the debt.
Yeah, I mean, I can look into what debt write-offs there were. I mean, these are the Burnham Beaches, for example, the relatively low debt, so only debts over 100,000 would require Finance Committee approval. So
yeah, but for a charity such as Ashton Common, that's a huge amount of the overall budget income.
Yeah, I mean, that's just within the current city standing orders in terms of the debt write-off approval process.
I understand. Sorry, I understand the debt write-off process. I understand how it works sitting on the finance committee. I'm saying for the charity's perspective, though, it would be interesting to know whether or not actually what is happening is officers are making good progress in getting that cash in the door, or whether or not things through the natural process are just being signed off and
Just being left.
therefore, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, happy to look into in terms of the outstanding debts, what related to, if there were any debt write-offs.
Basically, Clem, is it cash in the door?
I mean, I mean, the debt write-offs are relatively low, but I obviously need to look into.
Yes, they are low for this year, but I think it's the principle that we would like to see coming through. Katie was wanting to come in here.
I was just going to say, I absolutely accept the point. Happy to pick it up with the finance team and review it, because I understand the question that's being asked. So it's what assurance can we give the committee that we're actually following these up and the principle, as you say. So we'll take that away as an action.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you. So let's move on to item 14, which is for decision, page 11 to 56, which is the licenses, wayleaves, fees and charges. In some ways, relatively straightforward, and again another salutary reminder that things like filming are not given. They reach a saturation point but then sometimes drop right back. It depends where the filming is in the cycle, and indeed if the demand continues. And obviously, as we conclude the NECR, more of the things around income generation are going to be looked at. So can we take that as a given that those things are work in progress? But I think, Andy, you wanted to talk about elements of this. So off you go.
Thank you, Chair. The report proposes raising fees and charges by 3.6%. Based on October's CPI. The charges schedule is attached in the appendices. Appendix 1 shows without the increase, and Appendix 2 with the proposed increase. Appendix 1 aligns with what's referred to as option A in the report. Apologies, that should be option 2. The most significant sources of income from the schedule are filming at Burnham Beaches, and car park income. Car parking income is set to be reviewed during the course of this year, with the potential for a change in December. So no increase is proposed here. Previous iterations of this report have described other sources of income for context, and for consistency, this report does the same, but I acknowledge that this can confuse the picture somewhat. So items like grant income and the Strategic Access Management and Monitoring funding, the SAMS funding at Burnham Beaches, are included in the figure in paragraph 16 of the report, even though this isn't mentioned in the schedule of fees and charges. Appendix 3, which is the Commons Part 2 of the events policy, shows editing markups. This is because the report is subject to change depending on the decision of your committee here today, and also revisions due to mainly the Burnham Beaches SAMS project, requirements of that. So these changes can be seen in the context of the overall policy review, which was previously mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. And just because one or two people raised eyebrows at the car park charges not being changed, can you just explain to people why we're going into a slightly different cycle?
Certainly, Burnham Beaches Martin, the head ranger, feels it's important to consult with his consultative group first to kick the process off, and that meeting is not coming up for a few weeks yet.
And also, I believe, to not have too frequent changes of the car park prices to make sure that all the hardware and so on doesn't have to be upgraded to too frequently. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Before I take any questions, that what we're asked to do today, it is quite tight. Page 11, the recommendation to agree the proposed licence fees and sports charges as itemised in Appendix 2, and then on page 13 it's option 1 that is recommended to increase the licensing, sport and produce charges. So because of our timing, if we can keep questions fairly tight around those recommendations, that would be helpful. Ben.
I completely support, as written, Chairman, and the proposals. The two things I was just going to tack on was, can we have a benefit in kind review for the charities at some stage to be brought forwards? Anything that is sold or given away outside of the set licensing policy. And the second thing that we'd looked at was whether or not we should have a dedicated filming income fund that therefore can grow over time, because it is so inconsistent when it comes in drips and drabs. So we can be really strategic in how that's spent. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I think quite a lot of work is being done on that already. George.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just regarding filming, the income is in decline. Is that a timing issue, or is there any rationale, any reason why filming income has been in decline since 2022-23?
Well, one of the bumper years was, I believe, caused by the fact that Snow White had to be filmed twice, which was very fortuitous. So obviously they want to choose the same place. But I think a lot of that is cyclical. But Andrew, Andy, Emily, am I right?
I mean, yeah, it's just kind of what happens. We have good years, we have bad years. It's a bit like farming. It's kind of you farm for 1 year in 10, and maybe you film for 1 year in 10, and that's the reality of it.
And the one thing we've started to discuss with the consultative group is if we want to make that more stable, and if we want to maximise up to the number of days possible, what other things might we be able to do? But to go back to Emily's point, Burnham Beeches, for example, don't want to max out on their filming until we might have done the agreement at the centre. So, Emily, do you want to
Thank
say
you.
more?
I just wanted to add that I know that the team at Burnham Beeches and the other sites have done a huge amount of work cultivating really good relationships with, a lot of the big kind of filming companies in and around. So, that is really helpful in terms of kind of generating business. It is one of those businesses that cannot be guaranteed year on year. So, it does fluctuate enormously. So I think that comes back to the really important need to create a reserves policy, because some years you may have very little income and some years you may have a lot, and you just can't plan for that. It's like legacies, and that's why it is really essential that we have the reserves policy. But I just wanted to reassure members that we have done a huge amount in terms of building those relationships, developing kind of really good pipelines and bringing in more income sort of in an increasing pattern, but it does fluctuate year on year.
But still, I think it's only, is it 30 days that can be used for
filming? I think at Burnham it's 16 days. 16
even.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 30 is probably my mind thinking of the doubling up with Snow White.
One further point, Chair. I won't talk about income specifics because it's commercially sensitive, but in terms of, it's very easy, I think, to think Snow White cost 300 million, and it's very easy to kind of think, wow, we're going to get a massive chunk of that. It just doesn't work like that. So we just need to manage expectations and not get carried away with how much Hollywood
spend. Snow White paid for the information centre basically, didn't it? And which was fantastic, but yeah, okay. So can we move on from there? Thank you very much, everybody. That is for decision. Can we approve that, please? That's single recommendation. Thank you very much. Okay, so
just to clarify, was it that single recommendation, or was it the recommendation plus the two items that I had identified?
No, I think we're sticking to option 1, aren't we? I'm looking to officers. We're option 1, which is to increase licensing, sport and produce charges at a figure of 3.6. It's detailed in Appendix 2. Yes.
Yes, Chair. I think that's supportive, but what we'd asked for was a benefit in kind review in addition to that, and a consideration of reports to be brought forward on filming income.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming we were moving forward with that. Perhaps I was wrongly assuming if we need that for decision. Yeah, everyone's nodding. Yeah, Zoe. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, so moving to Epping Forest, item 15, the superintendent's report, information pack, page 73 to 90. We're going to take the report as read, but Jacqueline has been dealing with some huge issues which are no surprise to anyone in the room, I'm sure, and probably to other general public listening online. So Jacqueline's going to add to this, and then I'll pick up a few points afterwards as well. So Jacqueline, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Amber, if you could scroll forward down to the first slide with a picture on, thank you. That one, thank you. Yeah, just so since the report was written, just a couple of things to call out. So we had some really good and extensive coverage on a unfortunately a really large fly tip, which was made more significant because of the location was next to the Iron Age Hill Fort and in the heart of the SAC. So we think about 4 tipper loads. They broke one of the gates to get in entry and came quite far into the forest to do that particular tip. So obviously we managed to get that's the removal happening there, get it cleared the same day to avoid leaching into the environment. There's also lots of hazardous waste there, so we were protecting the public from that. So we decided to be very public about it, and just to kind of flag up the significant cost to the charity of the fly tipping. It is a national issue. It's getting quite a lot of coverage at last. It doesn't appear to be a police issue, and I think that we may need to talk more about that. It's seen as Environment Agency and local authority only at the moment. But it's a significant cost to private landowners, which we kind of fall under that category. So the cost of picking that up was £3,500. That's not including our staff time. We are investigating it. We do have some leads. Next slide, thank you. So we had sort of our first severe weather of the season with ice. Despite our constant messaging, and I know we're not the only organisation that do this to tell people to keep off the ice, we know of at least 2 occasions on which the emergency services were called out to rescue people from our ponds. So we don't really know what the solution is to that, but we continue to share the message that it's not sensible. And also the message very clearly, if your dog does go into a pond, call the emergency services, don't deal with it yourself. Next slide, sorry, thank you. So this is, we've had a really good response to some vegetation clearance. Members are probably aware of ongoing issues that we have in the Manor Park Triangle area of Wanstead Flats. So we have lots and lots of ASB, drug camps, all kinds of things happening there. It's very, very unsettling for local people who just want to enjoy the area. We've had multi-agency approach to trying to deal with the people and the issue, but we're also taking action to clear some of the scrub clearance, clear some of the scrub. So you can see on the left there that where it grows up, it creates opportunity to make dens and be out of the public eye. We've done quite extensive clear up operation, which was a number of the different teams working together and overseen by the conservation team, who created a management plan for the site, so that there was still obviously scrub has lots of beneficial role for birds, etc. So it was a planned operation. So we've had some good feedback from the community from that work. Next slide, please, Amber. So further to the report in November around accreditation, this is just a little photo op with the police for the community safety accreditation scheme. So the team you see there are our enforcement team who have received the accreditation, which enables them to effectively speed up their prosecution process. So it gives them a little bit more tools for that. Next slide, thank you. And I'll go faster. This is just some of the things that are in the report, just call out. Between now and the next committee meeting, we hope to have delivery of our first ever Epping Forest Visitor Guide, which will be an annual guide from now on, as you might expect to receive if you visit a national park or somewhere. So this gives you the how to, what not to do, what to do, where to go, etc. So it's the first stab at it. We welcome feedback, and we'll feed that into next year's publication. Next slide. The grotto stabilisation is due to finish in March, and this is the steels arriving, so we had to close the path for a little while to allow that to happen. So that they effectively are the props that stabilise the grotto. So that was quite a major operation. As my colleague Peter was saying earlier on, that work was largely funded from our surveyors. So thank you to them for that. Next slide. So we've been out and about, still continuing over in the autumn, later in the autumn at the Copthall Apple Day, Essex Field Club. Just rattle through these slides now, Amber, thank you. A couple of several exhibitions, lots and lots of volunteering events and activities happening at the visitor centre. And we did our formal launch of, that's too fast, formal launch of the Brambley Hedge Trail, and we've started on the Ponds project, which members came to see at the last away day, and that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And it just gives a flavour of all the activity that's been going on, but I really do think we have to congratulate the team and thank them for the speed of response, particularly with the fly tipping instance and the professionalism there. They were absolutely terrific, and Jacqueline obviously led the team really, really well. One question there, Jacqueline, just quickly, which George was asking about rewards linked to the leads.
Yes, thank you. I think we've got leads at the moment. Quite often we're
in public, obviously.
I'll pick some of it up in non-public, but we have at the moment, we don't think it's a call to the public. We have done that previously where we've put signs up where we ask for witnesses, but I think given the nature of how it happened and the timing, we'll carry on with what we have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the other things to pick out were the success of the carving, which was brilliant, and the significant increase, like with the Commons, of volunteer involvement in projects, which is really beginning to get ahead of steam, and also the Nature Resilience and Landscape Member Oversight Group, which was a really, really good meeting led by Tanith, who I believe is online, so that's excellent. And the 150th group met just before Christmas, and the next meeting coming up is the engagement and accessibility. So please, if you do want to join with those, let me or Zoe know. Just a quick comment about why EDI initiatives are appearing. That's partly because we want to, and we need to do that anyway, so that we actually draw things together as a thread. But also for our 150th celebrations, accessibility and engagement will be an absolutely key part of that. And so by gradually showing a trail there, then we draw a focus to that. So more to come with that. That was a very initial step by Jacqueline into that for art reporting. So 2 questions, Ben, followed by Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Just a really quick one. I know David Jackman at Everything Epping Forest News has done a really good job over the last couple of weeks in identifying fly tipping incidents beyond our borders to show actually this is not an Epping Forest specific issue. This is much wider, and actually it requires, you know, a real consensus of effort to drive the changes that are required. And we know the challenges with local recycling centres and other things that we really need local councils to help us with, because we're certainly left picking up the cost. The numbers that have recently been reported is actually fly tipping incidents are down from 90 in a 3-month period. From 111 to 90 in a 3-month period. Could we just ask officers to reflect on how we are reporting some of this information, whether it's by cost, time, you know, ecological impact and other things? So actually we aren't just showing a single number, because I think in that period as well, we've had joint operations, covert CCTV, a whole range of other things, and the success factor is of course prosecution too.
I think Jacqueline's nodding there. Yeah. Good, thank you. Paul?
Mine's a really quick one. Could we have an early oversight of the visitor publication before it goes out?
Jacqueline, when will it be available for members online?
I'd hate to commit to that. I think the ambition is second week in February for it to be ready back from design. So as soon as we have that, we can send that round internally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, but it's looking good. Good. Okay, everyone happy if we move on there with the thanks for some tremendous work to the team. Good. So item 16 for information, again, the risk management update. I think information pack, page 91. If we take this as read, similar, I think questions to the Commons we don't need to ask. But is there anything in addition to that, Joe? Is there anything additional you would like to say here? We appreciate that, you know, what you're doing here and that it's a work in progress. So, Joe.
But nothing specific to add, Chair. Again, it's a summary of where we are at the moment. I've highlighted, given a bit more detail on the top for red risks for members' information, and there'll be a detailed report to the next committee.
Okay, happy with that, everyone? Good, thank you. So moving on to item 17, which is also for information pack, page 101 to 116. Clem, anything you want to add here? I mean, from my point of view, I think this for Epping Forest, it's a good example of how historic underspends have affected the whole picture in terms of staff vacancies. And now that staffing is almost full, then that the budgeting coming under pressure. But do you want to say anything around that?
Well, just the fact that so for 25-26, Epping Forest are forecasting an underspend, largely due to the staff vacancies and the unspent on salaries, but that money will be able to be put into reserves as a result of changing the funding model. Obviously, where there's less vacant posts going forward, this will put that underspend on salaries will be sort of less pronounced for 26-27, as most roles are now filled.
Thank you. And this is obviously something in terms of the budget moving forward that the team and members are keeping a very, very close eye on. So possibly more to come on that, but that was for information. So item 18, though, is for decision, and this is the licenses, produce income and charges, page 57 to 68. Trish, you're going to answer this and build in some questions that have come from various members, and I think particularly for members where we go from here, I think is particularly important in some of these areas, but off you go.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of the parts in there. On paragraph 9, there was just a request to confirm that's Chingford Golf Course, not all the golf courses on the Forest. That's the golf course that's internal to us.
It's a question regarding the drop in beef sales in 24-25. That was attributed to the blue tongue restrictions that we had. We couldn't move any cattle off or sell any of the young cattle. That was lifted in the 25-26. So those cattle have subsequently been sold. There's the price we've put up football won't come in, and we won't see that difference until 25-26, so that'll be reported this time next year. A couple of other things I just wanted to draw attention to based on what the Andrews have said. We made 160,000 more in filming in 24-25 than we did in 23-24. That was mostly a result of two things. The writers' strike was past that in Hollywood, and also we had two very big films that came directly to us. One being Knives Out, one being a Dick Turpin thing. The latter didn't actually make it to television, but they did the filming with us. We got paid, so that was positive. And we also made 96,000 more in regulatory licenses, which is utility firms, stuff like that. So it, you know, we don't know what we'll see next year, but we haven't had any big filming come forward as of yet.
Okay, thank you very much. So page 59 has the item or point 10 and 11 that we need to agree. Anybody, any questions, or can we move to George?
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask Trish, is in liaising with Burnham Beeches, because they, you know, where they're having some regular success with filming, do you liaise together as regards where they sort of cast their net in the water to get companies to film from their location, if that makes sense? Thank you.
I mean, I'll resist the temptation of saying that it would be great if they just came to us, but I think it's often they'll, you know, that people will come to us and say, we're interested in filming at your location because they filmed with us before. And I think Trish, that's probably what Andrew will find.
But what I heard was very, very positive coming from there, and they do seem to be on the offensive, not just sitting there waiting for people to come to them. So what would be beneficial for all concerned is if you put your heads together and then they could share with you how and where they got the successes in attracting film companies to their location.
Yes,
and maybe you could pick up.
I think Andrew's.
When they are filming, we're always taking advantage of understanding what's coming next in the pipeline and what projects people are working on, because these film crews work, you know, they don't work together as a collective all the time. So it's always very interesting to sort of tap in, make those connections, see what's coming up. Sometimes just say, this is what we've got, because they'll go, oh, we were looking at that for something else. So we're always trying to get those advantages where we can get them.
I think Andrew wants to come in, and then Nicholas, and then we'll move on, please, because of time.
Yeah, Chair, briefly, there's, as you say, there's definite opportunities for cross-pollination and saying, well, we can't do it here, but we can do it somewhere else. So yes, we will definitely do that. A lot of the time, the directors know the site so well, they are very specific. So they're not kind of thinking, do you know any woods around here? They know about the dips in Burnham Beeches, they know about the light, they know everything really well. So very often they kind of like, I want to go there, nowhere else. But definite opportunities for cross-pollination.
And Nicholas, finding.
Two things. One, ironically, Epping Forest won that one from Burnham Beeches because Epping Forest had an existing church. They were going to build the church at Burnham Beeches. Now, the other thing is I wanted to say that some positive work has been done with the films, because the Knives Out film was more profitable for us because a decision was taken to let the High Beach Green be used for their services and parking of vehicles. One of the things that we had suffered from in the past is allowing other landowners to get the somewhat substantial income from parking vehicles, whereas we actually managed to accommodate that at High Beach with great success, I thought.
Yeah, and I know everybody knows we have to be sharper with that all round, and I think a lot of good work is coming through with that. Good. So can we approve the options, please, page 59, there to move forward? Yeah. Good, thank you. Right, item 19, committee diary and upcoming events. Don't need to say much here, 117 to 122. It's self-explanatory. Can I just draw your attention to the parliamentary reception on the 19th of May, which is to kick off the legislative journey of the 1878 Act, and indeed the earlier Open Spaces Act, which took a good number of years to put together. So we're starting it before 2028, but then that will kick off our rather condensed journey through the process. So please make sure you got that date in your diary. This replaces the civic dinner for 2026, so don't think you get both. Those days have gone. And just a reminder again that please, if you want to join any of the member oversight groups, the volunteering, any other of the other activities, please let myself know, Zoe in Jules' absence, and then Jules once she's back up and running. But other than that, I think committee diary fairly straightforward. Everyone okay? Yeah. Good. I've got no further questions relating to the work of the committees because we had excellent questions sent to us, and no further any other business unless anybody has anything. No, good. So Zoe's just going to exclude the public. Can we all agree to the exclusion of the public, please? Thank you.
Members, please vote while we stop the live stream and recording.